So let's now tackle about Ken-Ken puzzle. Ken-Ken puzzle, or also known knowledge square, is invented by Tetsuya Miyamoto, a Japanese math teacher who intended to use puzzle to be an instruction-free method of training the brain. So the name derived from the Japanese word for cleverness. Ken-Ken and Kaduko are trademark names for a style of arithmetic and logic puzzle.
So this is the example of Ken-Ken puzzle. As you can see, there's a box there that is called the pre-cage, and the pre-cage contains a whole number which serve as the clue for us to answer the remaining numbers.
Start answering the puzzle with the least number of box or boxes. Example, answer first the orange box. Think of a 2 number that when multiplied is equal to 4. So it could be 2 times 2 or 4 times 1. Remember that there must be no repetition of number in a row and column. So the answer is 4 times 1. And since there is already number 1 in the third column and third row, the number should now be put in first column at third row. So the next step, we will answer the question on the pink boxes. We will think of a number that when multiplied is equal to 12. And that is 4 times 3. As we can see, at the last column and at the last row, there is only one unknown number. So now, we can conclude that 2 is the answer. So now, we will find out the missing number at the blue box at the last column. Think of a number that when subtracted to 2 is equal to 1. And that is 3. As we can see, there is only one unknown number at the third column and at the third row. So now, we can conclude that the missing number is 2. Let's continue answering the puzzle at the green 3 boxes. So think of a number that when being multiplied is equal to 8. Since we have a given number 2, think of 2 numbers that when multiplied is equals to 4. So that the answer will be 8. It could be 4 times 1 times 2. You can see at the first column on the second row that there is only one unknown number. So we can conclude that the answer is 3. So we are now at the easiest part of the puzzle. We will just going to fill the missing number by column and by row. Finally, at the last step, check if there is a repetition of number in every column and every row. Check also if the answer in every cage is equivalent or exact on what is being asked by the target number and its symbol.
And now, we can conclude that this is the answer for our Ken-Ken puzzle.
So now let's talk about logic. The term logic came from the Greek word logos, which is sometimes translated as sentence, discourse, reason, rule, and ratio.
Briefly speaking, logic is the study of the principles of correct reasoning.
So now, we're going to answer a particular logic. So the goal of this logic is for us to find who among these people possessed a particular data that the logic itself provides. For example, each 4 students, Sean, Maria, Sarah, and Brian, have different majors. These are English, Math, Social Science, and PE. Additionally, in order for us to answer the logic, there are clues that we will be using to answer it. The first clue is that Maria gets home from school after the major in Math, but before the major in PE. The second clue is that Sarah, who is the last to get home from school, is not the major in English. The third clue is that the major in PE and Sarah leave for school at the same time. And the last clue is that the major in Math lives next door to Brian. So the question now is that how are we going to answer it? First, let's make a table and put all the data given. Then try to find the answer from the given clues. As you remember, Our first clue is that Maria gets home from school after the major in math but before the major in PE. Therefore, we can conclude that Maria is not the major in math nor the major in PE. So, let's put an X onto it. Then, our second clue is that Sarah, who is the last to get home from school, is not the major in English. Therefore, we can conclude that Sarah is not the major in English. So our third clue is that the major in PE and Sarah leave for school at the same time. Therefore, we can conclude that Sarah is not the major in PE. If you would remember from our first clue, Maria gets home from school after the major in math but before the major in PE. So since the major in PE and Sarah gets home from school at the same time, therefore Sarah is not the major in math. Since the only slot for Sarah is the social science, hence Sarah is the major in social science. On the other hand, on the side of Maria, the only thing that has no check is the English. Therefore, we can conclude that the major in English is Maria. And from our last clue, the major in math lives next door to Brian. So since the major in math lives next door to Brian, therefore, Brian is not the major in math. Therefore, we can conclude that the major in PE is Brian and the major in math is Sean.
Hello, this is the end of another vlog.
So we hope that you learned something from us.
So again, we are the team
Jando!